Penn State defeats Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl 31 to 14, sealed with an interception. Nittany Lions are off to Miami. Great game running the football, some questions with the passing game. We're going to talk about it all here on this Locked On Nittany Lions squad show.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seiko. I'm your host of the show. And we're going to change mics here. So we're starting off great to finish 2024. My name is Zach Seiko. I'm your host of the show. He is Corey Geiger and Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football and Locked On Ducks to help us out here. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Happy New Year. We are so close to 2025. Penn State wraps up 2024 in a fantastic way. A few speed bumps along the way, but they're there. They're going to Miami. They're in the Orange Bowl, and now they get to watch Georgia and Notre Dame fight it out. I like this win. I obviously I wish I would have seen more out of this Penn State team. Going to talk about some of the injuries that piled up on the defensive side. Abdul Carter, of course, notably denied Dennis Sutton. Jalen Reed kind of walked off under his own power. I mean, Boise State's a physical team here. Corey, I want to start with you. I mean, initial reaction is, hey, Penn State got a win. Boise State, they were able to keep Boise State at an arm's length, but it felt like it should have been more of a dominant win.
Hey, it's a good win. You know, we're in uncharted territory no matter what here. When you're Penn State's up 14-0 early, you're thinking, okay, this is going to kind of get out of hand. They're going to blow them out. And yet Boise scores a touchdown there that would have made it 24-21. Huge hands to the face penalty that negated that touchdown. I mean, that was a gigantic play in the game. I give Boise a lot of credit for their fight. But look, Penn State's got a lot of good players. We're going to talk a lot on this show, I'm sure, about Abdul Carter because that will be a significant component in the next round because Penn State's defense was just not the same without Abdul Carter. Boise really moved the ball pretty well. That's a concern. But look, Penn State's got a lot of good players. It's a good win. And, hey, James Franklin does not lose I was watching the game, guys, with some Penn State fans. One guy was all nervous there. James Franklin does not lose these games. This isn't Ohio State or Michigan. When he's favored by 12, James doesn't lose these kinds of games.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by the outcome. So far, this has been my best score prediction, spread prediction yet for the college football playoff games we've seen. I thought Penn State would win, cover, and Boise State would be competitive, but you'd always feel like Penn State was the better team and kind of keep them at an arm's length, which is what they did. I think even if that touchdown had made it 24-21, I think that changes the feeling of the game. I don't think it changes the outcome of the game. But Corey, you mentioned that, Abdul Carter went off and it felt different for Penn State's defense. On the one hand, yeah, I agree. On the other hand, they still only give up 14 points. Maddox Madsen had thrown 3 picks all season long. And for those, I'm not in this camp particularly, but for those that are of the belief that, well, Boise State just shouldn't be treated this way because they're playing the Mountain West and it's a higher level of competition, they have a lot of fodder after this game. A lot. Genty is 104 yards on 30 carries. Maddox Madsen throws the same number of picks as he had all season long. They look like a team that was going up against a caliber of opponent that since Oregon, they just hadn't really consistently faced. Now, I am not opposed to Boise State being in this playoff for a couple of reasons. Number one, I value the regular season above all else. And so I would like to see the most deserving teams get in, not who we think are the best. Because I think bowl season has taught us here, guys, just because you think someone's better or you think someone's the best team of a group doesn't mean that they are. Bama lost as a double-digit favorite again. So I'm in favor of that. And number two, I think that Boise State's resume was actually pretty darn good. If you look at UNLV beating them twice, that's not a small thing. I'm not saying it's equivalent to winning the SEC of the Big Ten, but it's not a small thing. They did take the number 1 team down to a game-winning field goal on the road. If Oregon had made an extra point earlier in the game, it actually only would have been a 1-point win for Oregon. Not that that changes the calculus entirely. So I thought Boise deserved to be there. I think this game was closer than the final score indicated, but I'm not surprised by the outcome because Penn State's a better team.
So where, Spencer, let me just get a quick rebuttal from you. Where, in terms of strength of victory from this, On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say that you would rate this for Penn State?
If 10 is what's 10 exactly?
Like, in terms of value, the way that they won the game, you're saying, hey, Boise State's from the Mountain West Conference. Should they have been the 3 seed, right? There were some questions because people are going to say that this is a Mickey Mouse playoff run. Okay. And that's what, and you started to allude to that a little bit. I don't want to look just over this Boise State team because I feel like they could have given some problems to some other teams. Penn State just happened to be in a good position to beat this Boise State team. I'm not discounting the Broncos here. They certainly have flaws that wouldn't let them go on a run, but they're going to say, oh, well, Penn State played SMU. Penn State played Boise State. Should they have really made it to the semifinals? So what would you rate this on a scale of 1 to 10 based on the way Penn State performed?
Well, and for that crowd, I'd remind you that Penn State has beaten those opponents by a combined score of 69-24. Like, what does a playoff team look like in that particular setting of this easier
Not Alabama
playoff path? Yeah, I mean, excuse me. So I'd probably say this is like on a scale of 1 to 10. This is like a 7-8, like a really good score. Not great, not oh my gosh, best performance ever, because it certainly felt like it could have been more, but it also could have been closer. So I think this is a win you look at and say, yeah, Penn State looks like a team that can go to the national championship game. I don't care if they get Georgia with Gunnar Stockton or Notre Dame as is. I don't see, with the way Penn State is playing, how they can't win that game and play for a national championship, which is not something I would have said about Penn State during the season. But in the last month, they're playing really good football, and their only loss is to the only team in college football who, knock on wood, please don't let this change tomorrow, only team that hasn't lost in the country this year, that being my Oregon Ducks, of course. And they lost by 8 points. And yeah, they were down in that game, but they played really well. They moved the ball on a great defense all game, and they keep moving the ball. So yeah, I think it's hard to not feel good about Penn State at the moment.
Corey, how much stock are you putting into this win over Penn State? Because the same idea, that's the comments that I'm seeing mainly on X, right? I'm trying to drive this conversation based on what are other people saying. For Penn State, SMU, Boise State, did they deserve to be here? Should they have been seeded as highly? Whatever have you. How much stock do you put in this game when Penn State's really going to get a test? Georgia or Notre Dame, one way or another. I think that's a close game either way, and that's the best opponents that Penn State's going to see since Oregon and Ohio State.
Well, there's two conversations here. One, Penn State did everything it had to do. This is not necessarily even so much a Penn State discussion. I mentioned earlier, kind of half jokingly, but in all seriousness, James does not lose these games. The reason Penn State fans get angry at James is because he loses games against elite teams or teams that have maybe a little bit better talent. They were a 12-point favorite in this game. The question is, should a number 6 seed ever be a 12-point favorite over a number 3 seed? And the answer is unequivocally no. This was botched so badly. There's no way in the world that Boise should be a number 3 seed. I'll give Boise credit. I don't take anything away from Penn State. This system has to be fixed. You cannot have Boise be a number 3 seed and be a 12-point underdog, and get a bye. But again, that's a different conversation. Penn State, from the Penn State side, the reason James doesn't lose these kind of games, we can joke all we want, Zach, and a lot of people maybe do about the 1-0 mentality, but there are a lot of schools around the country that don't have a 1-0 mentality. All right, they get up for the big games and then they shrink for the small games. And to James's credit, I think the single best thing that he does as a coach is he gets his players ready to play every single game. And for that reason, you don't lose to SMU. You don't lose to Boise. Whether they lose to Georgia or Notre Dame, that's a different discussion. But Penn State's in this position because, quite frankly, they got unbelievably lucky. I think it was tremendous that they lost the Big Ten championship game. Rather than playing Ohio State tomorrow, they played Boise State today. So, but again, that's a different discussion that the college football playoff has got to get fixed.
And their fans got treated to a home playoff game.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it had been a hard-fought win, Penn State's going, good thing we didn't win that conference championship game. That would have been a mess.
Yep.
Yeah, that would have been the wrong thing to do. What the heck were we thinking there? No, it's a systematic failure here, and I know that they're reevaluating it. All right, let's talk actual, box score game results here. I mean, Penn State 31-14 over Boise State here. like I said, they were able to keep them at arm's length. Now, Boise State did end up outgaining them in terms of total yardage here, but that has to do with, big plays at the end. I look at the fact that, hey, Penn State forced 3 interceptions. They had the 1 fumble recovery from Ashton Genty. Honestly, should have had another convenient timing for the offensive lineman, but Penn State forced 4 turnovers against a team that does not turn the football over. That's the MO. They play disciplined football. They don't commit any penalties. They win with those demoralizing, sustainable drives. And Penn State shut down Ashton Genty. I was spot on when I said, hey, Ashton Genty is going to get over 100 yards. He did, but it was going to take him 30 or 35 carries to do so. Tom Allen made it his life's mission to make sure that Ashton Genty did not have a Heisman-like performance, and they succeeded. Now, in the process, though, which we will, I imagine we're going to talk about it in the upcoming segments, but yes, they did deal with some bumps and bruises, Abdul Carter, of course, but the way that Penn State played this game, defense over the past 2 weeks against SMU and Boise State now phenomenal. Question marks about the offense. Play calling, I made a joke that, hey, former offensive coordinators at Penn State would have approved of this play calling. I agree that Andy Kotelnicki did not have his best game. But Boise State did make adjustments. Like, let's be honest here. Penn State went up 14-0. They could have rolled over. And Corey, I do respect what Boise State did to make its adjustments, to make it a little more difficult. Like, they got pressure on Drew Aller. I have not seen Drew Aller under that much duress all season long, including games against Oregon and Ohio State.
Here's the thing, Zach. Just run the ball. That's what I'm hearing from every Penn State fan. Just go run the damn ball. Key play in the fourth quarter.
Call Brent Key.
It's 3rd and 1. You've got a
He's not busy.
You got a 6'5", 240-pound quarterback. You got Katron was averaging 9 yards a carry at the time. It's 3rd and 1. You could kind of pretty much seal the game right there, and yet they throw a pass. It's those kinds of plays where Penn State just gets too cute. Andy Kotelnicki gets a little too cute. And again, I think if Penn State would have just come out and said, we're going to run the ball down your damn throat, I don't think Boise would have been able to stop it. But at the same time, Drew threw three touchdowns. And quite frankly, even though his completion percentage wasn't great, I thought he put the ball on the money a bunch of times. Amari couldn't handle a tough catch. Yeah. Harrison Wallace couldn't handle it. Those were great. Those were NFL caliber throws. So, I mean, there was a lot of things to like about the offense, but the play calling, Zach, I got Penn State fans yelling at me, why don't they just run the dang ball?
Well, Corey, can I join that crowd retroactively? I was yelling at my TV like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, you're running the ball at an incredible rate, which I'll touch on in a moment. But my favorite play call, the magnum opus of Andy Kotelnicki's game plan in this game, or unwillingness to just turn around and hand the freaking football off. 3rd down and 1. Let's go fake tight end sneak. Toss to Drew Aller, throwback screen to Tyler Ward. Like,
it's beautiful.
Yo, man, let's hand it off. Now, that's very simplistic sometimes. Well, they know you want to run it on 3rd and 1. Okay, fair enough. I think they knew you wanted to run it at the end of the game when Nick Singleton broke a 58-yard touchdown. They knew you wanted to run the ball. It didn't matter. Boise State got pressure because they did what they have done all year. Their blitz packages are really good. They are clear. You talk about play calling offensively a lot and not enough defensively. The way that they scheme their blitzes is really good. The way they stunt, overload the side, they are well timed, they are well coached, they mix it up, they will come after you. And sometimes Kotelnicki had an answer. I thought his best play call was the second touchdown to Tyler Warren. He saw that Boise had been blitzing over and over. So what did he do? He went max protection and said, we're going to have just a 4-man route and a 6-man protection to make sure Aller's got enough time. He had just enough time, and he gets Tyler Warren in a 1v1 who makes a phenomenal catch. But I'm glad you brought up the completion percentage. Aller 13-25. Man, could his receivers give him just a little bit of help?
Would you guys agree with me? A couple of those throws, again, one to Amari, one to Harrison Wallace. Those were gorgeous throws.
They're perfect.
NFL receivers.
They're perfect. They're
perfect.
Now, none of these that we're talking about here were easy catches, but I can think of 4 balls off the top of my head, not even going through the whole game and having it memorized like I have an eidetic memory or something. But I can think of 4 where at least 2 of those should be caught. Maybe not 4. but 2 or 3 of those should have been caught. Aller was putting it on the money. The first touchdown to Tyler Warren was beautiful, but I want to go back to the running game for a moment, but I think we're gonna pause. But I'm locked and loaded with thoughts here, Zach Seiko.
Oh, we're gonna get to all of it. Plus Penn State's defense. I also kind of want to address Penn State's offensive line. Is that Boise State's defensive line pass rush stunts are just that good? Or should we now be concerned again about the front five for Penn State? We're going to talk about all of it here on this squad show here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. You can also bet on more than that. There's passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, how many catches a player will have, how many tackles are made, how many field goals are made. It's more than just money lines, spreads, and totals. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for a chance at $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And welcome everyone back to the squad show. Corey Geiger, Spencer McLaughlin. Spencer, you look like you are ready to ring in the New Year's. We are just Eastern time, less than 30 minutes away from 2025. So this show is going to carry over into the New Year's. We are going an hour here. Spencer, just pick back up with your thought process, your ideas, where we left off before break.
Gentlemen, would either of you like to do you have the box scores pulled up in front of you?
I do.
I got it.
Okay, well, then that makes this less exciting. So I'll just ask the people in the comments and Corey's black screen here, perhaps. What do you think the Penn State running backs each averaged in yards per carry in this game? You get to guess, comment section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They were both over 7 yards a carry, and Katron Allen was just a tick under 8 at 7.9. Follow-up question. Do you think that those two guys combined had as many carries as Ashton Jeanty did by himself? What do you think the answer should be, and what do you think the answer is? Of course, the answer should be, well, yes, of course, if you're running the ball that well, you do it until they stop it, right? But the answer is no, because they had 29 combined carries, and Jeanty had 30. That was insane to watch. Penn State had a great rushing attack in this game. They went for 216, and that's with -4 yards for Drew Aller because of the sacks that Boise State was able to rack up. They had 4 of them total and had plenty of other pressure as well. But Allen and Singleton went for 220 yards combined. Guys, I felt like they could have gone for 300 if there had been a concerted, not necessarily a game plan, but an adjustment to what was happening on the field. Because, Seiko, you and I talked on our show on Monday coming into this game about how the troublesome area for this Boise State defense had been its passing defense. The secondary had been torched all year. So if you come in with a game plan of, hey, we want to attack their weakness, I understand that. But when you see the game playing out in front of you like that, you got to be willing to adjust. And they're able to get away with this against Boise State, where they have a better roster. But in the next round, you're going to go against Notre Dame or Georgia, and you can't afford to fail to make that adjustment, or I think it costs Penn State a potential run to the national championship game. But every time they touched the ball, it felt like 5 yards was a win for Boise State. Felt like that was the best they could do. And it felt like that 58-yard touchdown run that iced the game was coming. Lo and behold, it arrived. So I thought that was puzzling. But again, we talk about all these mistakes, and Penn State won by 17 points. They're just playing really good ball.
Well, that's because we have to look at it this way, because it's not so much about Boise State. I think Penn State fully knew that it was going to win this game. There was chatter that, hey, Ashton Jeanty, I mean, besides our predictions, there was just the thought process that Ashton Jeanty is not going to have this big type of game because Penn State's going to make a concerted effort. So long term, we have to address these things because, like you said, a Georgia, a Notre Dame, if they get to the championship, which would obviously be great, an Oregon, an Ohio State, a Texas, who knows, maybe even an Arizona State, right? But the big three up on the other side of the bracket are definitely going to make you pay for these kinds of decisions. Whereas Boise State, Spencer, you and I addressed it. This is a team that runs specifically, they have to win a specific way. So they can't ad lib. And we saw that happen in real time. Penn State can make these mistakes and overcome them, but an Ohio State team that can score at will, an Oregon team that can obviously score at will, and I throw Texas in there because they have similar personnel that match Ohio State and Oregon. Against Georgia and Notre Dame, possibly slightly different. I actually think Penn State has decent matchups against either of those two teams. We'll talk about that in our final segment. But why we have to talk about all these problems is because Penn State can get away with it against Boise State, but not against any of those other teams I named, maybe, less against Arizona State and against the rest of the group. Corey.
And Zach, I think I just want to mention real quick about the running backs, because remember, Nick and Katron both had some injury issues this year. When all is
they weren't 100%.
Yeah, when all is said and done about this season, if they do go on and win the national title, one of the biggest reasons why will be because they both got healthy at the right time. Mm-hmm. So that kind of puts a bow on that. But what you're talking about is the fascinating part of, I'm going to throw it out, Zach, is Penn State an elite team? Okay, we've talked about this since 2018 when James promised it after the loss to Ohio State, and they've not become an elite team yet. Well, they're in the Final Four this year, and this goes back to our discussion earlier about who you've beaten. Is Penn State an elite team because they're in the Final Four? Or are they not an elite team because all they beat was SMU and Boise State? And this gets us to the discussion, is this stuff going to work against Georgia? If you're messing around, farting around, being too cute on 3rd and 1, that ain't going to work against Georgia's defense, okay? It works against SMU. It works against Boise. So I'd like to get, Zach, you're on this every day, Spencer. I'm just curious the way you might look at this from a different perspective around the country. Do you think Penn State is an elite team because they're in the Final Four? Or have they shown you enough yet to think that they deserve to be in that category?
I mean, how are we defining the word
That's your
elite?
criteria. That's your criteria.
I'd say right now they are playing like one of the 5 to 6 best in all of college football. I don't think I could come up with 5 teams that I definitively say are better than Penn State.
Even though they lost their 2 most important games this year, and they were a 12-point favorite tonight and won, and they were an 8.5-point favorite over SM. I'm not trying to be a wet blanket here. They're in the Final Four. You can still kind of say who have they beaten. They were supposed to beat these teams. So do they have to beat a Georgia or a Notre Dame or a Texas for the rest of I think for Penn State fans,
they do.
They kind of do. I think for the rest of the country, might look at Penn State as already being kind of an elite team, Zach.
I will agree with you from even honestly, the rest of the country is going to say, hey, it's great that Penn State is here. Everyone is going to, for the most part, say SMU and Boise State were not the best of the best in this college football playoff. And that's completely understandable. But James Franklin still carries around the record against top 5 teams, top 10 teams, Ohio State and Michigan, and doesn't have that. What are the signature victories for Penn State? What are
these 2 games, honestly?
These 2, right, yeah.
And to
Ohio State 2016.
And to an extent, I don't
Rose Bowl.
Do we put those games above the 2016 Ohio State game? I don't.
No.
Exactly.
That's one of the great programs in wins in program history.
Yeah, that 2016 Ohio State game still reigns supreme. And look where we are. We're wrapping up 2024. And in my mind, I don't even know that maybe SMU would probably rank as maybe a top 5 win, but in Penn State, in James Franklin's tenure. But it's definitely the 2016 Ohio State game comes to mind. To an extent, the Rose Bowl game against Utah, they lose their quarterback. That's not the same Ohio.
Yeah, but they had that game in the 4th quarter. I don't think. I hated seeing Cam Rising get hurt in that game. It makes a difference. I don't think Utah wins that game.
Utah. By the way, that was Utah's 4th loss that season. Remember, that Utah team was pretty severely overrated.
So
I don't know. They're Pac-12 champs. Pac-12 is pretty good.
It was their 4th loss.
So honestly,
but only their 2nd once they made a quarterback change. So they started that season with Charlie Brewer. They went 1-2. They put in Cam Rising. He lost 1 game the rest of the way, and then won the Pac-12, and then lost the Rose Bowl.
I guess what I'm getting at, Spencer, is from this. Let me just throw out this comparison. Everybody in the NFL loves Mike Tomlin. They think he's awesome. Steelers fans don't. Steelers fans really can't stand Mike Tomlin because
Steelers fans are smarter than I thought.
And that's my point is that I wonder if because we're so close to it, like Zach and I, we may still need to see them beat an Ohio State or an Oregon or a Georgia for them to take that next step to become elite. But I wonder if
they have to win the semifinal. They have to win in the semifinal.
That's the way I view it. But I'm not sure if everybody else, Zach, would agree with that.
Spencer,
who don't live in the Penn State bubble.
Give me 5 college football teams right now that you can definitively say are better than Penn State. I can give you Oregon. I can give you Ohio State because I watched those games take place. I know they were close and competitive, but Oregon had a 28-10 lead, and Ohio State fumbled the ball at the goal line, or else it's a 14-point win on the road. And didn't Will Howard throw an interception in the end zone in that game as well?
He fumbled the ball out of the end zone in that.
Or was it just fumble? I might be thinking something.
He was going into.
Zach Wheatley made a great play. It's not not like
I know, but I'm saying like that game felt like it was closer to Ohio State winning by 20 than it was Penn State actually winning the football game. So, but again, outside of those two, who are you saying, no question, no doubt about it, are you saying is way better than Penn State right now?
So
please don't say Texas.
We're looking at it.
The point is they haven't beaten one yet, and so
we're looking at it from two different angles. Yeah.
That's. I would agree.
Sure, they don't have the win. They don't have the win to prove that, but I guess you get stuck with them by default to be in the position where they are. But they showed in this game as the number 6 seed, they should have been the number 3 seed.
Yeah,
because they. And again, that's a whole different conversation that we can have about the playoff. And I saw Brett McMurphy's tweet saying that they're actively considering, not just giving the 4 highest seeds to the highest ranked conference champs. I think that's great because I'm not opposed in any way to Boise State being in the playoff with the resume that they did put together on the field this season. I am against them having a first round bye and pretending like Penn State at 11-2 with 2 losses to Ohio State and Oregon by by one possession both times, that was harder that was easier to obtain and less deserving of a first round bye than what Boise State did this year.
Zach, can I just ask the question of you this way?
Okay.
If they lose to Georgia or Notre Dame, are we not going to around here see the same comments that Franklin can't win the big game? Even though he just won 2 playoff games, does he have to win that game?
You will see it.
Yeah.
Let me answer Spencer, because Spencer, you bring up a good point. Penn State would be an underdog against Oregon 2.0, Ohio State 2.0, probably Texas as well. They'd be a favorite against Arizona State. We'll throw them in here because they're still alive. It's not New Year's Day yet. Against Notre Dame and against Georgia, I think Penn State's going to be a slight favorite. Like I said, I give Penn State a stronger fighter's chance against both the Fighting Irish and Georgia than I would, because that has to do with personnel matchups. I don't like the way that Penn State matches up against Texas, against Ohio State and Oregon, because they all have similar criteria. They have an elite passing attack, a capable quarterback that doesn't turn the football over, whatever. Quinn Ewers might not be the best or whatever have you, but they still have a capable, competent quarterback with 3 or 4 different pass catchers that are mostly better than what Penn State has in the secondary, or at least it's a strength on a strength. It's AJ Harris. AJ Harris takes away 1, and then who covers the next 2? That's what we saw against Oregon. That's what we saw against Ohio State. Texas has that as well. Corey, to answer directly you before we go back to break, Penn State, absolutely. With James Franklin, not because then it's up big game James, Boise State, because we're already talking about it. This is a Mickey Mouse playoff run. Boise State and SMU, it's even debatable, should they even be here? So absolutely, if James Franklin, see, we told you, and the games continue to pile up. So James Franklin needs a win over Notre Dame and or Georgia more than any. And it doesn't matter whichever team is over there. Some people might argue, well, they didn't have Carson back. Georgia's still got that defense and the playmakers and Kirby Smart that's led this team to multiple national titles to back that all up. They are still viewed as a championship contender. So one way or another, if Penn State wins the semifinal and gets to the title game, then that chatter becomes a little quieter, but all the evidence points in the opposite direction here. So we can pick that back up. I think we should talk about the defense as well. Let's talk about the defense. Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis-Sutton, Jalen Reed, all dealing with various bumps and bruises. Is that going to be an issue going into the games against either of Notre Dame, either of Georgia? We'll talk about it on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me before. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, but Rocket Money can make it so easy for you to track all of them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place. Whether it's subscriptions, whether it's your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit in the new year, Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Now, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. You can use it to cancel services that you aren't using anymore, and you'll save a ton of money. Plus, there's the goals feature. So there's a tangible goals feature where you can automatically set aside money for your future, and then there's no more stressing about budgeting every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And welcome back to the Squad Show here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Penn State defeating Boise State 31-14. In case you missed it in the Fiesta Bowl, if you're just joining us in real time, I see we have 200 viewers on the YouTube channel. So thank you so much for checking this out and spending your New Year's Eve with us. We are less than 15 minutes away. Gonna miss the ball drop, but I honestly rather be talking about Penn State, and then I will catch up in 2025. So, gentlemen, the defense. Abdul Carter going down. In short, Penn State's defense looked not entirely different, but significantly different. It changes the way that Tom Allen coordinates the defense. It changes the way how obviously Penn State executes, whether it was Smith Vilbert, Amin Vanover, whoever's on that other side of the defensive line, because Denai Dennis-Sutton, before he went down, had an awesome game, aside from some penalties and stuff, but production-wise was very good, one of his better games of the season. But that is not the same Penn State defense. You are already missing KJ Winston, who was a superstar going into this season. And then Abdul Carter is that top 15 NFL draft pick for 2025. And if you don't have him against Notre Dame or Georgia, who we all agree with are a better opponent than SMU and Boise State, that is going to be an issue. And if Abdul Carter is even slightly limited, I do have my concerns, Corey.
Yeah, you could just see him on the sideline. It's hard to speculate, you know.
It's an arm injury, we know that. It's an upper body injury.
Yeah, he wasn't moving his upper body very much, kind of left shoulder. He just wasn't moving it much. And what you noticed on the field was Maddox Madsen had 4 or 5 seconds to throw the ball most of the time. He had the one stretch with about 10 consecutive completions, and I think the 10th would have been that touchdown that was negated by the hands to the face penalty. But he had a lot of time. Now, typically, Zach, we've talked about this for years. The way to beat Penn State is not to run the ball right up the middle. Nobody really beats Penn State that way, except for maybe Michigan when they had all their horses. But the way to beat Penn State is have an efficient quarterback like what Dylan Gabriel did in the Big Ten championship game. If he has some time, or if he gets rid of the ball very, very quickly and is efficient, that's how you beat Penn State. And what I saw when Abdul Carter was not in the game was a concern. That would be a major factor, whoever they play, if Abdul Carter can't go.
Yeah, you can't lose a guy like that and be the same. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't still be good, because can we give the flowers to the Penn State secondary here? I mean, they were outstanding. I thought across the board. I know they gave up.
That's interesting. Ask some Penn State fans that they think they were terrible.
I know. The busted coverage was bad, but overall, like that's a bad moment.
That's one play.
Yeah, I'm not trying to gloss over that. But Seiko, you and I talked I talked to you on Monday's show about how the the best part of Boise State's offense is they run the ball, and their play action is when they're really good. They're not a straight drop back passing offense because Maddox Madsen doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but he's an incredibly smart cerebral quarterback who, when his team got trailing, thanks to the Penn State offense, forces the ball on 3rd and 20. I mean, just a horrendous decision. But again, Penn State's in perfect coverage. Safety rotates over, breaks on the ball, boom, interception. They get the interception
Zach
and the
for
game.
you.
Yeah, I mean,
that too. Yeah.
I just thought they did a great job. They tackled in space. There wasn't a ton of yards after catch for Boise State. It was catch the ball, and you've got to have solid air yards, or you're not really moving the ball through the air consistently. But I know that they played a Mountain West schedule for the most part this year. But 3 interceptions throughout the course of the year and 3 interceptions in this game, that's a really impressive performance by the Penn State secondary. I thought they did a really good job making it hard, save for the busted coverage. But if you take that away, and look, sometimes that'll happen. It's something you can certainly clean up, but that accounted for 53 of Maddox Madsen's 304 passing yards in this game. And it was his only touchdown, and he had 3 interceptions as well. I think overall you have to feel pretty darn good. Maybe not great, maybe not a 10 out of 10, but a solid 8.2 about how the back end of that Nittany Lions defense performed after a game against Oregon where Dylan Gabriel was slinging it all over the field, and Tez Johnson had a big day. You're not going up against the same passing offense here, but I felt like they came ready to go, and forcing 4 turnovers against a team that just hasn't made them all year. I think that was the step up in competition that a lot of people thought it would be, and lo and behold, it was.
My instant rebuttal, Corey, I want your thoughts on that, but my instant rebuttal is it was Boise State. They don't have the same kind of the domino is Ashton Genty. If you stop Ashton Genty, everything falls apart. This defense, the rest of the offensive game plan, because Maddox Madsen is not that. He's not this air raid quarterback. They don't have the receivers to march up and down the field to make these spectacular plays. And honestly, I was surprised through the game, even when it was slightly out of reach. Man, these guys that I haven't even heard of. This wasn't Cam Camper. This wasn't Caples. They're two of their leading guys, or even Lauder getting in the action. It was guys that really weren't on my radar in the game prep leading up to the Fiesta Bowl that were, hey, AJ Harris is in coverage and he's wide open. Maybe that's game script. Maybe that's the way that, just, hey, let's not give up the big play. Just play some back off coverage, a variety of things. But Notre Dame's going to be able to move the football if Abdul Carter is not in. I don't know if Georgia's interesting because the receivers are not good. They lead the nation in drops. So we'll talk about hypothetical matchups in the final segment. So for Penn State's defense, if Abdul Carter is out, it's kind of like that Ashton Genty domino effect, Corey, where your pass rush isn't getting home, the quarterback can sit in the pocket comfortably, and then it allows the wide receivers to get open because really only AJ Harris can cover for so long.
It is a concern because, again, let's not sugarcoat or diminish Abdul Carter's significance. He might be the best defensive player in the country. The fact that Travis Hunter won that is a joke. Travis Hunter can win the Heisman, but Abdul Carter was phenomenal. So there's no question that's a huge loss. But what this reminded me of, guys, was the old school Tom Bradley defense, the bend but don't break defense. We'll let you move the ball up and down the field, but you're not scoring a touchdown. That's kind of been really Penn State's defensive MO for about 30 years or so. You can get yards on Penn State
and this season.
A lot of times. But when you get into the red zone, they're not going to let you score. That's kind of the issue that Penn State's always been good at. So that would be my concern if Abdul Carter can't play. I would expect to see whoever, Georgia or Notre Dame, to really just control the ball, control long stretches of the clock, and move the ball. Now, whether they score touchdowns or not, that will be what will determine the game. But I think Georgia or Notre Dame will be able to just really have 25, 28 first downs, 450 yards, if not more. And again, it puts so much pressure on your defense to perform in the red zone. That would be my major concern if Carter cannot play. Do
you give Penn State a chance?
Sure.
Okay.
There's not here. This is the thing. We have these are. I'm a sports talk guy. You guys do podcasts. It's fun discussions. Is Penn State elite? Are they not elite? These are great, discussions for sports talk radio. I do think Penn State could beat any team in the country on a given day. Penn State could beat Oregon on a given day. Penn State could beat Ohio State on a given day.
Those were one-score games. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, if fully healthy. You mentioned KJ Winston, but they haven't had him all year. But what I saw tonight without Abdul Carter, it was alarming. I mean, you went from Penn State usually gets to the quarterback in a second and a half to Maddox Matson again. He had 4 and 5 seconds to throw on most of those plays. That's going to be a big issue.
Well, and that's just it. Spencer, you can talk about Boise State's offensive line too. That's a good group. That's a solid group. Cage Casey, according to Pro Football Focus, is a top 15 offensive tackle. So because when Amin Vanover was in the game, I'm watching that matchup one-on-one, and there is no pressure. Smith Vilbert did not have a good day. I'm eager to see what Pro Football Focus has in terms of that box score with the analytics and those game grades. Spencer, do you give Penn State a fighter's chance if both Dani Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter are either limited or both out against Notre Dame or Georgia?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
2 reasons. Number one, the most important trench players to me for Penn State are not those guys. Hot take alert. Hot take. Here I come. Freight train rolling down the tracks, lit on fire like Ghost Rider, but on the train. So Penn State's offensive line is phenomenal. They are phenomenally good. I know that Drew Aller was under more pressure than you maybe would have liked to see today. How many times did Drew Aller have 5 or 6 seconds to throw the ball? How many times was he able to execute a Michael Penix-esque deep drop and take a shot down the field? On the second touchdown to Tyler Warren, how perfect was that blitz pickup? And are we just going to overlook the fact that they ran for 216 yards as a team? The running backs had 221 of those yards on the ground. So that group can take you places. And yeah, losing Dani Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter be a loss for the defense unquestionably. Which of those offenses, Notre Dame or Georgia, is terrifying? I mean, legitimate question. I'm not saying either one isn't capable. Jeremiah Love is awesome. Riley Leonard is good. I'm saying which of those offenses do you look at and say, boy, if you're giving those quarterbacks time to throw, they're going to go for 340 and 5 touchdowns like Dylan Gabriel did. Which one?
That's where it shows up. Penn State doesn't play those teams until hypothetically the championship. So maybe you get them back in 2 weeks.
I look at the prospect of playing Notre Dame or Georgia and think
they still have a chance.
Dream matchup for Penn State. And I don't want anyone to hear that and think, oh, Penn State's getting another break. No, it's just how the matchups were working out.
They definitely have a chance against either team. One thing I will just throw out, I don't know how we're going to analyze the game so much, but say it's Georgia specifically. I would blitz on 80% of the plays. 1, Boise State did a great job of it. But 2, Drew just doesn't get rid of the ball. And there was a lot of talk on the broadcast, and there's been a lot of talk here all season about Drew's progress and development. And if he comes back next year, what kind of pro prospect will he be? I think picking up the blitz, not holding on to the ball too long. A couple of those, it did take about 4 seconds or so for Boise's scheme to kind of work out for the linebacker to sneak by. And, that should have been enough time for Drew to do something. So if I'm Georgia and I'm watching that film, I'm bringing the house on almost every play.
And who knows if they would even have to, because Georgia can get organic pressure. But we are going to let's talk about that. What concerns us about Georgia? What concerns us about a hypothetical matchup with Notre Dame? Why Penn State could win those? Why they could lose them? Because we don't know. It is 60 seconds until the new year, at least the way that I have it. And this stream's probably slightly delayed. We are going to go to break again, but when we are back,
take the under in either one of those matchups, guys. Under. Under.
We're going to take a break. Wish everyone a happy new year on the other side. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, which players, how many points each team will score. But not only that, passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, how many catches someone will have, how many tackles, how many field goals are made. It's more than money lines, spreads, and totals, and it's over at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for a chance at $250 in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're in the final leg of this, and it is officially after midnight on the East Coast. For everybody that is on the, yes, Happy New Year, January 1st, 2025. Spencer, not you, though.
Not me.
You're on the West Coast.
I'm looking at the clock on my computer. It's right down. I don't know why I said computer, so weird. But on my computer, and it says 10 o'clock on 12/31/24. So you guys are just time travelers up there.
This is so. I'll talk to you later on. So that's not for you. No, but of course, everybody. I hope everybody has a safe, healthy, blessed, Happy New Year, the start of 2025.
Order Ubers, please. Order Ubers.
Yes, thank you for the PSA. In all seriousness, though, yes, make safe decisions. Right, the emphasis on the healthy and safe.
Just call an Uber. It's not that much money. You'll get it back. You'll be fine.
And thank you for joining us on New Year's Eve going into New Year's Day. Seriously, you're spending your new year with us here on the Squad Show for Locked On Nittany Lions.
Good to know there are people out there just as lonely as us.
We're all lonely together. That's enough. No,
Darn right.
Hey,
Darn right we are.
We are celebrating a Penn State win. I mean, we could have come on here and because boys, the underdog magic was starting to seep through a little bit, and you wondered, are the Broncos going to make a push? Just a little bit in that second quarter when they responded 14-7. It's like, man, and Penn State kicked the ball back to them to start the third quarter. That was a quick 3 and out, and you're thinking, and at least for the moment, I'm like, I'm still confident Penn State wins, but if Boise State's going to hang around, they're at least going to make it interesting. But none of that happened. So here we are. Penn State is going to Miami, Orange Bowl, Thursday, January 9th, for anybody that doesn't know. That is a game on Thursday against either the likes of Georgia or Notre Dame.
Who is picking these days of the week?
Right.
The NFL.
For playoff games.
The NFL.
What are we?
Yeah.
This isn't like it's the Major League playoffs where you have a bunch of games to jam into a series.
The good old National Football League. That's why. College football is afraid of them and does not want to put games on the same day as playoff games. Because that's the first. I just said it in the read. It's the regular season's wrapping up. So get ready for the postseason, right?
I suppose having things to watch on Tuesday and Wednesday is not like the worst thing in the world. But the national championship on a Monday, goodness, what are we doing?
Yeah, and that's it. That's what, at 9 p.m. roughly. Well, that's a basketball anyway. I don't know when the football. Anyway, but all right, let's get back to Penn State's matchup. I get your point, but it is. But I do want to clarify that. Hey, this is a Thursday night matchup in Miami for either Penn State and or Notre Dame and Georgia. So the panel can answer. I want the panel to answer this. The comments section. Notre Dame or Georgia, which team would you rather see Penn State play for the sake of a Penn State victory? I'm going with Georgia. I think Notre Dame is the more complete team. Gunnar Stockton, I take Riley Leonard over Gunnar Stockton. I take Jeremiah Love and Notre Dame's rushing attack over Georgia's rushing attack. And for what it's worth, I don't think people look at Notre Dame as a defensive team, but honestly, Notre Dame's defense is better than Georgia's defense not by a lot, by a hair. But Notre Dame's defense collectively is a better defense than Georgia's this season. Corey, who would you rather see Penn State face for the sake of a Nittany Lions win?
That's interesting. I'd like to hear the rationale because, just from the eye test, I think Penn State would have a lot of trouble with Georgia's defense. So for me personally, I would probably pick Penn State to beat Notre Dame, but I would pick Georgia to beat Penn State. I just think Georgia's defense is something like Penn State has not really seen outside of Ohio
Notre Dame's defense
State.
is good.
Yeah, Notre Dame's defense is just like that.
It's good.
And they have the offense to complement it. Georgia does not have the offense to complement its defense.
we got to wait and see about Abdul Carter. We do have a nice little long break here. If Abdul Carter can't play, I'm going to pick them to lose to either team. So I think it's that significant. But I mean, at least me personally, I guess maybe I still have a bias that Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, and that's in the back of the brain. I'm like, I'm still having a hard time buying, because really, who is Notre Dame beaten? Of a really high caliber. I guess that's kind of still floating around back there. But to me, I don't think
Army.
I don't think Penn State wants to face Georgia.
So on the Notre Dame schedule question, Army's legitimately their best win. And by the way, that might be a better win than anyone wants to give it credit for, because it's Army, it's Service Academy, it's all this. Tulane was flying up everybody's playoff projections and college football playoff rankings. Army took them to the woodshed in the American title game. I mean, beat the daylights out of them. And so I'm not saying that Army is a world beater. I am saying Army just finished a 12-win season, and Notre Dame blew them out. Army lost to Navy. Notre Dame blew them out. Louisville's a 9-win team with their bowl victory in the Sun Bowl over Washington today. Notre Dame only beat them by 7, but I think that game was might have been on the road. I don't remember. All the games are blending together here. But I do think the answer is Georgia. I just don't think it's by a lot. The reason I take Georgia is I do trust their offense less. As I mentioned earlier, though, I don't trust either of these offenses, because Georgia has been up and down all year, and now they have a backup quarterback. Notre Dame has found a second win in the back half of the season, but I also just watched them against Indiana, who's good and certainly closer to Notre Dame and Georgia than some of the teams that Notre Dame has blown out in the previous games, and they put up 31, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that performance, but it's okay. It's okay. I think it's the best thing you can say about Notre Dame's offense collectively in a big spot. They can run the ball really well. I think Notre Dame's defense is incredibly good, but I'm with you, Seiko. I take Riley Leonard over Gunnar Stockton here. I don't think that's a big decision, or I don't know how many people will take Gunnar Stockton. I'm sure some will. Maybe he's going to have his Cardale Jones moment and lead Georgia to the national championship game. I've watched that happen before to my own team, so it's certainly possible. It's just that I can't trust that when Leonard's a known commodity and guy is a gamer. He can use his legs, and I think he can make enough throws to win you a football game. But I would say from a coaching standpoint, give me Kirby Smart over Marcus Freeman.
Oh yeah,
because I'm with you, Corey. I think Marcus Freeman is really good. I'm not someone who's of the belief that Kirby Smart has lost his touch and Kirby Smart has only got, Georgia's not that good. No, Georgia was my preseason SEC and national champion, and if Carson Beck had stayed healthy, I think I would have stuck with that.
I don't know if I'm right in saying this or not, but I do think there is merit. There is a tangible merit to having been there before. And
yes.
Georgia's been there all the time, yep. So you can't forget that.
Georgia's been making these runs since 2018 when they went to the national championship game. I mean,
they've been there. Marcus Freeman has not.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people might jump to, I'd rather play Georgia 80-20. I'd rather play Georgia like 60-40. And if you had Carson Beck in there, I'd rather play Notre Dame. But I don't think either one's easy. I think Penn State, though, either way, is perfectly capable of winning no matter who they play.
And I would either have Penn State like a 1 to 2 point favorite. I think Penn State would be the favorite, and that's Abdul Carter. Let's assume that he's healthy. And for anybody joining that's wondering about them, I don't know. I don't know their statuses. ESPN couldn't even get an official update. Penn State keeps that very close to the vest.
Zach, how are you not more in the know than ESPN? Come on, man. What are you even doing here?
Yeah. So if ESPN doesn't even get the report on that, James Franklin is certainly not going to give it away in the next press conference in the media scrums.
He'll give it to Bruce Feldman.
Yeah. Well, someone will get the scoop. He loves
Bruce.
But us here as the local media, Corey, you and I know very well, we are not going to get any sort of update on Katron Allen, who left with, he's limped off the field. Great game by him, of course. Dennis Sutton went down after celebrating a defensive sack towards the end of the game. He looked fine. And then Abdul Carter, of course, leaving early in the game with what was a severe injury. The fact that you hold him out of that game, you're thinking definitely long term. I think if Penn State was in a situation where they were playing Notre Dame, where they were playing Georgia, season's on the line, you just got to. Penn State felt confident enough to say we can leave our superstar off of the football field and think long term here, 9 days away, and still beat Boise State without Abdul Carter. I'm serious. I'm pretty sure that's how James Franklin and Penn State approached that.
Yeah, that's probably so. But again, just looking at the body language, he wasn't even trying to get ready. In the second half, he wasn't even trying to get ready. So I really.
Do you think I'm just gonna throw this out there? Do you think they didn't try that hard to get him ready for the game because they knew they were going to win anyway?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
think so. That's just my opinion, though.
That's kind of how it felt to me. I mean, certainly, I'm with you guys that the lack of effort and what I have come to know about Abdul Carter, I imagine he'd want to be out there on the field, but
they have bigger fish to fry.
I think Penn State was looking up and going, I think we got this one. We need you for the next round, my man.
Here's the thing. I'm going to mention this for a third time. It was 24-21 if that touchdown holds up, and it didn't, and that changed the entire game. So I don't necessarily buy into that we got this all of a sudden. Boise had all the momentum in the world at that point. And yes, I do think Penn State still would have won, but I don't know that there was this cockiness factor. If that touchdown goes and it's 24-21, I don't think they're holding anybody out for any reason whatsoever.
No, either way you can look at it. I'm going to side with the fact that it was almost like an emergency situation. I think if it is 24-20, because he didn't change into street clothes. He didn't go into sweatpants. He stayed. He just had his helmet off and was standing around waiting. So it was almost like, someone texted me in the middle of the game, break glass if emergency for Abdul Carter.
Good,
so that was kind of the setup here. I think if it did turn to 24-21, you would have seen Abdul Carter maybe come in on select third downs, because I do think the injury is serious. You don't hold him out of a quarterfinal. Doesn't matter the caliber of opponent if it is not serious. But I also think, in the back of their minds, like, hey, if there's a chance that in 9 days you can at least be available, we need you. And that's why you saw a lot of freshmen go into the game.
And hey, look, there's a respectful business decision. That guy's going to get $25-30 million in a few months too. So there's a lot of things that goes into these kinds of decisions if he's not 100%.
That too, yeah. He's got an NFL career, and I think he's as good as gone. I don't think that he's coming back. For anybody that thinks that he might return for another season, he is injury or not, he's a first-round pick regardless. Okay, any kind of lingering thoughts here about whether it's Penn State, Boise State? I would rather see Penn State play Georgia for the sake of a win. For the sake of historical, I know Penn State played Georgia for a national championship game. I kind of want to see them play Notre Dame again. I feel like that's just more of in terms of the, historic, like that game in Miami, an Orange Bowl in 2024 in the first ever expanded college football playoff would be so pleasing for all the different sections of fan bases. Your general college football fan, diehard Notre Dame fans, the older fans, the younger fans, same thing with Penn State side. It would bring the college football fan base together. I'm not saying that Georgia and Penn State wouldn't have that same kind of status, wouldn't have that same kind of interest, but the historical factor of Penn State versus Notre Dame just seems a little more attractive, if you will, than a Penn State versus Georgia.
I have a closing thought.
Do you know?
I thought the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl was also fantastic theater. That was it. That was all I want. I thought the other bowl games were really fun as well, and I thought this was a good competitive game. I legitimately enjoyed all of the games today, and I just can never wrap my mind around the crowd who's, why do we just cancel all the bowl games that are non-playoff?
Because they still get millions of viewers.
Because I watched a Cheez-It go through the upright while being suspended from the rafters. They're trying to, be on the same level as the Pop-Tarts Bowl, who are knocking it out of the park from a marketing standpoint.
I bought Pop-Tarts. I couldn't help myself. Yeah.
I love it all. I absolutely love it all. I don't think there's a huge brand difference between Penn State playing Notre Dame or Georgia. I think they're both. Yeah. I think they both give Penn State the credibility that James Franklin has
Either
been
way.
missing from a
Yeah,
victory
I agree
standpoint
with
if
that,
they're able to pull it off.
Corey?
Number one for me is suck it, SEC. Everybody shut the hell up.
Yeah, the SEC fanboys are quiet today.
Number two is even better.
Did you guys
Pat
see?
Nard-
Oh, go ahead.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Pat Narduzzi is such a buffoon. He is such a buffoon and an embarrassment to football. And the Penn State fans who are still watching this, I promise you will love this. Because to kick a field goal on 4th and goal at the 1 yard line in the second overtime to tie a game.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, I
one
love
of
this
the
call.
Stupidest football decisions in the history. The stupidest football decision ever
So
was the Seahawks trying to throw from the 1 yard line instead of just running with Marshawn Lynch. But what Pat Narduzzi did, and keep in mind, remember, Zach, you'll remember this when Penn State played Pitt in 2019. They're down 17-10, and Pat Narduzzi tries for a field goal on 4th and goal from the 1 then against your rival, the person you cry about the team you cry about all the time that you want to play them, and you miss the field goal, and you end up losing. Pat Narduzzi to me, and then, making matters worse, he doesn't even shake hands at the end of the game and walks off the field after losing a tremendous game to Toledo. I just feel like I need to unburden myself. I no longer work for a Pittsburgh media outlet. I can share this with the world. Pat Narduzzi is a giant idiot.
Yeah, that was a tough decision to watch play out in real time. But Corey, I'm from the Pacific Northwest. Who do you think my NFL team is?
Are you a Seahawks fan?
Yes.
Would you agree that that's the worst decision in the history of sports?
Yes, I've tried to block it out of my mind, and I haven't been able to yet because people like you keep bringing it up.
That's the Super Bowl right there, man.
Thank you. I didn't realize that. Oh, now it's
you know
really
what?
painful.
Sorry, Spencer. I won $1,000 on that. I had Patriots in the money line.
All right, Seiko, we have now reached the end of this live stream. I will be jumping off.
Hey, can I get Ohio? You've made your prediction for Ohio State, Oregon Public, I imagine, right?
Yeah, 30-27. I'm taking Oregon. I don't even know why.
All right, Sco Ducks. We'll see if that ends up being Penn State versus Oregon in the championship. We'll see. Corey, okay, for the sake of it, Oregon and Ohio State.
I'll go Ohio State 32-26.
No, I really don't like Corey.
I do think Ohio State gets revenge as well. Somewhere, 34-31, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think there's a lot of
I think you
scoring
give
to be
good
had.
offensive coordinators time to prepare. They're going to score points even on a really good defense.
Yep, nice weather. Rose Bowl should not disappoint. And
Never
Penn
does.
State, but Penn State rings in the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. Here's to a fantastic, blessed, healthy, awesome 2025. Thank you for spending your New Year's Eve plans with us here on the Squad Show on Locked On Nittany Lions. That is Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On Ducks and Locked On College Football. He is Corey Geiger, our special guest, our analyst here on the show. My name is Zach Seiko, the host as always. Daily content here around your favorite Penn State sports teams, and that's going to do it for us here on the Squad Show. And we'll be back with more Penn State content, of course, and check out all the other great shows on the Locked On Podcast Network talking about college football and so much more.